Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide. It's Monday again. Hi, preschool peeps.
Hi, peeps.
Welcome to a new week.
Yeah. Hope you had a good weekend.
Yeah. The weekends, though, seem to fly by. Although
right?
I have to say that time is definitely not standing still. I feel like time, where has summer gone?
It's gone. Yeah, it's over. And it seems like it just went so fast. Like,
It did.
I don't understand.
Summer went really fast, and everybody is either already back or going to be back in school really soon. So during this episode, we want to caution you about something that I was speaking to a colleague about. They are coming out with studies now about the pandemic's impact and the socialization impact on young children, the skill building impact on young children of having been through this pandemic, where there's a lot less of things happening than used to happen with children. And these studies are showing some interesting things. A lot of us have been saying for months that we're going to get children in early childhood settings now who have had less of a chance to socialize and less of a chance to use self-help skills. So we're going to really need to focus on those socialization and self-help skills. Everybody's been saying that, and that is still true.
Yeah.
But there's something else that we need to focus on that's coming out in these studies that when I heard it, I was like, oh my goodness. And I heard this in the context of talking with a colleague who I'm working with on a project having to do with screening for developmental delays. So we were talking about developmental delays, and she said to me, have you seen the latest studies having to do with the pandemic? They're showing that the lack of play is impacting children's skills. And there's a concern that professionals and families will mistake some of the fall off of skills caused by the lack of play with a developmental delay. So we thought, we should put this information out there on this podcast to let you know that some of the things you may be seeing from the children this year, next year, even the year after, and we're not sure for how long, are not necessarily a developmental delay. So here's what they're finding. When children play, they practice many, many skills. During this era that we're living through, children are having not only less opportunities to see peers, but less opportunities to play overall. The tendency seems to be, according to these studies, that at home, children are not playing nearly as much as they did in the past and when they were in their early childhood settings during those months when they weren't. So children were not playing nearly as much during very important months of their lives when they practice skills. Play is when children practice the skills they have acquired so that they can add more skills to that. They practice it during play, they master it, and then they can add more skills. So if they're not playing as much in the day, they don't get as much of a lot of things, including, and here's where they're finding the fall off so far. And these studies are ongoing,
Yeah.
But here's where they're finding the fall off so far. Creativity and inventive thinking has been sort of stalled. Problem solving skills have been stalled. And all of the practice of skills that would lead to later things like reading comprehension have been stalled, because it's really during dramatic play that children begin to develop the ability to understand symbolism, and reading requires symbolism.
Yeah.
So this is a deeper problem than we thought.
This is a lot deeper than we thought. Yeah. I mean, I think we already knew like the children would have some sort of setback because of this COVID, right? But I don't think we realized it was going to be this deep.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I think we thought about the fact that they're not seeing as many humans, so they're not having as much of a chance to practice building relationships with adults and building relationships with peers. But it goes so far beyond this building relationships and even the self-help skills we were worried about. Because when they're home, people will just do things for them to get it done quickly.
Yeah.
So, hey, I'm a parent. I know that. So But it's much more serious than that. And again, one of the concerns is that we're going to look at children who are lacking some of these skills, and it's environmental. It's not a developmental delay, but people may think, oh, this is a developmental delay, or they may think, I don't know if this is a delay. Maybe we should have it evaluated. And so those systems that evaluate children, like early intervention, special education services wherever you live that are funded through federal dollars, they might become seriously overwhelmed. They were overwhelmed to begin with.
Yes. Yeah.
They were overwhelmed on a good day.
Yeah.
But now they're saying these systems are going to become so seriously overwhelmed if families and professionals, and when I'm talking about professionals, I'm talking about early childhood, medical professionals, everybody. Mm-hmm. If we don't just all sit back and say, okay, this was an impact of the pandemic. This is not a delay in the brain development of this child.
Yeah, but I think the hard part is, how do you know the difference?
That is the hard part.
So like as a teacher, I would rather maybe send them for evaluation if it's looking that way, because I don't want to miss something that might be a developmental delay. And I think that's where it's getting to be like, well, we don't know. So that's what makes it so hard. You're not going to know if it's something developmental or it's something environmental.
This speaks to why developmental screening tools are so important. Some of those screening tools might kind of suss it out. But even so, if the children are simply lacking the skills because they have not had a chance to practice them during play, and they have not had a chance to even develop them, never mind practice them, but things like inventive thinking are developed during play times.
Yeah.
That's a huge issue. I'm not sure what the skill levels are going to be like going forward.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess you would have to think that since all the children went through the pandemic, that maybe all the children will kind of be at this baseline, right? And it's not like all the children are going to have it and then one's not, and you're not going to be like realizing whether it's environmental or developmental, because almost all, they're all going to be in this kind of situation.
Except the children who are in homes where play happens often. So imagine like a child who is in a home with, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 siblings, and the siblings often play together.
Yeah.
And so the adults are like, great, go play with your sibling. And so play happens there. Or a child who doesn't have the siblings, but the family very much understands and values playtime. So those children might not experience the same sort of phenomenon. And I think that I think you're right. I mean, if I suspect that a child has a developmental delay, I would recommend that be looked into. I'm not even quite sure how in evaluation that's going to be sussed out. Like, how do we figure out? And will they just sort of characterize it as an overall delay? And so we're going to work with these children and not worry about if it's environmental or developmental.
Right. Because in the end, it's about getting the child to where they need to be. So whether it is because of developmental or environmental, the goal is to get them where they need to be. So why not give them the extra help if they need it?
Here's a thought about where they need to be. That is,
that's the other thing.
That's a human-made construct.
Yeah,
where they need to be was determined by departments of education. This wasn't.
Well, that was my main thing about this whole pandemic, of everybody saying, oh, there's going to be so much learning loss. I'm like, no, there's actually not. You just meet them where they are. Like, it doesn't have to be considered a loss or a delay. You just have to meet them where they are, knowing that we went through this pandemic together. Right. I've always had that issue of this, like, oh, we need to get them back to where they need to be. It's like, no, but where they needed to be was just something in your own head as an adult.
Yeah, it is. It's in our own heads.
Because when I think back to when we were kids, now I don't know about you, Cindy, but I did not go to preschool or childcare or any of that when I was a kid. So when I showed up to kindergarten for the first time, that was my first time in like this big group setting. Now, I also had two siblings that I played with at home. My parents were always like, go out and play. It was different times back then. It wasn't considered a delay. It was just considered okay, here she goes. Now I went to kindergarten with a couple people who did go to preschool and childcare centers. So, but it wasn't like, oh, they're ahead of you versus not. It was like, okay, here we are. We'll meet you where you're at. It's like, when did we get into this society of like, you all need to be here, and if you don't meet that, you're delayed? Like,
I think like the point that you made though about, even I did go to a preschool program, which was pretty shocking for my generation, but I did.
It was rare when we were kids.
It was rare, but I did. However, I do remember sort of finger painting in kindergarten. Like kindergarten wasn't as academically based back then.
Totally different.
You're right. The point that you made about, we went out and played endlessly outside without adult supervision.
Yeah,
that doesn't happen so much today.
Yeah.
If you have young children in your lives out there, we need to think about upping the ante on the amount of time they play now, because they lost that.
Yes.
So at home, if you have not been spending a lot of time encouraging the children to play and playing alongside them to help to add on to their knowledge and extend their thinking, and ask them open-ended questions about what they're doing and all that sort of thing. If you've not been interacting with them while they play, hopefully you'll start to do that. And I think in early childhood education, as much as 60 minutes of uninterrupted free play in our high quality schedules has shocked people, I'm wondering if we need to up that now.
Maybe we do. Double it.
Maybe we need a couple of times in our day when they get uninterrupted free play. Maybe we need to extend that 60 minutes of uninterrupted free play to 90 minutes of uninterrupted free play.
Yeah. Or like 60 in the morning, 60 in the afternoon kind of thing. Like, or you want it to be continuous, like, I don't know. You have to, but I do think we need to up that for sure. 60 is what it was before the pandemic. And now. And
honestly, there are places that struggled with that notion.
They absolutely did. Yeah.
If we want to see results from our teaching that will help the children and lay the foundation for the future that they're going to be entering after these early childhood years, we have to pay attention to things like the lack of skill practice. Folks, they're not practicing skills as meaningfully or as deeply at a table with you as when they play.
Yeah.
They like insert it into their play, whatever they've learned, and they practice using it in ways that make sense to them and are meaningful to them. And that is so valuable. It's one of the things we've said for so many years about the importance of play. And when families say, I don't want my child playing all day, well, then they're missing all the skill practice.
Yeah.
So, and I think, and just to say a little thing about creativity and inventive thinking and flexibility of thought and all those things, that matters so much as they become older.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
The lack of that is going to be a problem for them, especially in this world that requires so much inventive thinking and innovation. They're going to want people to grow up and be innovators in this generation.
Yeah. I do think, like, we don't even know the full impact of this pandemic is going to have on the children. I mean, we're still in it, so there's that, but also
there is that,
but also we have no idea 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the impact of what the lack of play and is going to have on children that are growing up in it, so like this study that you found is pretty interesting. I was like, no kidding. Yeah.
Wow.
But I feel like that a continuation of that study to see, like, what is that child like in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years is going to be really impactful, I think.
I may be wrong here, but I think that this study, either as a whole or in part, was taking place with Head Start.
Okay.
That Head Start was sort of championing this research.
Yeah.
So this is really important for everyone who interacts with young children to know. And again, it's not even the lack of socialization alone or the lack of self-help skills alone. The lack of play is impacting them in more ways than any of the other two things.
Yeah.
Which is quite a thing when you think about it. When you think of the trajectory of learning and you think about the foundation that play lays for everything in their future. We were talking about, when I was having this conversation with my colleague, we were talking about what will these kids be like when they are adults, and it's hard to know.
I don't think we know. I don't think we will know for quite a while. I just don't think we know. We won't know, I think, until it happens, maybe.
And not to say they're not going to be great adults. I think they're going to be pretty awesome, but they might be, but I think that they're going to think differently than people who did not grow up during this. And they're going to, they're just going to have a whole different, I don't know, a whole different skill set and perspective.
And perspective is going to be totally different than what we grew up in, which is different than what they're growing up in. And what even they grew up in before the pandemic is different. I mean, it changes over time, but like this, I think, is going to have a total change in their perspective on things and the way they think and the way they do things. And
people talk about children being resilient. And I think that to an extent that is true, but resilience is different than time lost for skill building. Those are two very different things, folks. The wiring in their brains is being set in the early childhood years. The architecture in their brain is being set. And that architecture, as you get older, as Alison and I know, and many of you know, that architecture is harder to change as you get older, that we have to set the foundation really well. And these foundational skills matter. So I encourage you all to think about upping the ante on the playtime.
Yeah.
And being really involved as they play, not changing what they're doing, but helping them to think about what they're doing, asking them open-ended questions, participating, extending their vocabulary, extending their creativity, asking them, what might happen if they do this or do that, and extend to that sort of inventive thinking. What might happen if we added this over here? What do you think would happen? And have them do that and have them do some problem solving. Even the lack of sitting and doing things that we do, like that are hard now to do because of the fear of the spread of COVID-19, where kids used to sit and share, I don't know, puzzles and shape sorters and all these things that people are saying, no, we can't. There are certain things like we have to disinfect it in between. And so they don't get as much of a chance to use it. Even those sorts of things that help to promote problem solving have fallen off the cliff.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So now that we've thoroughly depressed everybody,
it really has been a little depressing. I try not to get depressed over it, but it's kind of hard not to.
Yeah. So now that it's really a charge for everybody. It's really, it's not meant to be, oh my goodness, it's meant to be, now we need to figure out what to do to fix this.
Yeah. You could help them through the situation.
Yeah. Help them out. More play. And people are probably like, more play. I just started to do it at 60 minutes. You're talking more play. More play.
Yeah.
That's what's really going to help. Yeah. And it has to be both at home and at their early childhood program, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
Yes. More play, not less. And I'm afraid that people will lean toward less and, okay, they're lacking skills, let's sit them at a table. Nope.
Well,
more play, not less.
That's, I think, what is happening, because they were like, oh my God, they're learning loss. So we got to get them back up and build them up. And it's like, no, you can just let them play and, and maybe make up that learning loss, which I think is a myth anyway, but still,
whatever,
whatever,
whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Okay. So folks, listen, we want to encourage you to respond to this episode, and you may end up in our feedback 5.
Yeah.
Go to howpreschoolteachersdoit.com or How Preschool Teachers Do It podcast on Facebook and let us know what you're seeing. Do you think that you're seeing the impact of lack of play as you interact with young children? What are you doing to help deal with that or to help combat that?
how are you doing it? That could really help a lot of other educators and parents. How are you doing it?
Yeah. How are you
How?
incorporating more play? So
Yeah.
write to us and let us know. And if your response is picked and you give us permission to use your name, you may hear your name on the podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, we're going to let you go ponder that and reply to us. And we
Yeah.
will catch you next time on the podcast.
All right. Bye, peeps.